Can we trust Salah and Palmer for captaincy in game week 2? And is GYOKERES now essential after the Kai Havertz injury update? We're going to discuss all of that in today's video alongside, of course, my game week 2 team selection. So as always, if you haven't already, make sure to drop a like on this video. Aim for 300 as always. And if you haven't, smash that subscribe button. Enough waffling, let's get to today's video. So first up, just a quick recap for those that missed it, and probably rightly so that you did miss my game week 1 review, because it wasn't the finest hour for my team. 52 points, which has led to a 5.1 million overall rank, but it isn't all doom and gloom because it's only one game week. So for anybody out there with a worse rank than myself, firstly, let me know in the comment section to make me feel better. But secondly, do not panic. It's only one game week. Lots will change over the coming game week. It's all about how we bounce back after a bad game week. So 52 points. The standout ones were Sanchez with that late bonus point as well that they allocated on that Monday night. The double Spurs defense coming in clutch. And of course, Mo Salah with that 95th minute goal. Otherwise, this would have been one for the history books in terms of a terrible week. The problem is when your premiums blank, your team struggles. Cole Palmer, Bruno Fernandes. I'd even put Morgan Rogers, not as a premium, but one that you do have to invest some money in. And of course, Watkins is João Pedro blanking 2 apiece. So not the best start to the season. You always want to start things quick and get some points in the bank, but it isn't disastrous. Now, what I've done here is I've put those little emojis next to certain players, the lock symbols, just to remind myself of players that going into game week 2 and possibly game week 3, I want to try and keep in my team. I don't want to be knee-jerking anything. So Sanchez, I want to keep in my team. No need to make a goalkeeper move. Murillo and Pedro Porro, I know these guys are good. Don't be panicking getting rid of them. Mo Salah and Bruno Fernandes as the midfielders. Bruno Fernandes is such an easy cash cow for a lot of people, but we have to remind ourselves, he was 1 defensive contribution away from getting 2 points. That would have been 4 as his base. He then had an opportunity of a penalty, obviously got turned away from a ref. That could happen at any time, but remind you that he is the penalty taker, and he created 5 chances in the game, even in that position. And I would like to think against a worse opposition, there is going to be more opportunities for him to actually get into the final third rather than having to do all of the running of either Casemiro or Ugarte. I think Man United might have more controlling games rather than a basketball game, that what it was at times against Arsenal. So I want to keep Bruno, and yes, people are panicking about Mo Salah, but I want to keep him in my team. Got to remind myself why I brought him in and not try and knee-jerk myself over to Erling Haaland. And the other one's going to be Ollie Watkins, but we'll touch on him in the next section because, as I said, there's a big injury in that Arsenal team, which makes GYOKERES a really, really exciting pick for game week 2. However, I have not ruled out the potential sell of Dewsbury Hall. All these 5.5s going off, like Randers, like Anderson, has made me think already, have I made a mistake going really, really cheap with Dewsbury Hall? Do I need to already allocate some funds to improve him before these players become 6 million and possibly unattainable in my team structure? Palmer, not panicking, but I am also not wedded to him this season like I have been in previous seasons. I am willing to move away from him if a cheaper option does emerge in another team. And Morgan Rogers as well. I need to see something more from Aston Villa than that of Morgan Rogers in this week. And finally, João Pedro. This is a real problem. I knew this was going to be an issue. I don't know why I bought him, but I do think going into game week 2, he has one more lifeline. And then if he's early sub or he starts sub, everybody's selling him in game week 3. And I'm predicting there is going to be some transfers on that Friday night because, of course, Chelsea are the early kickoff in this game week. So let me know how many points you got in the comment section. Let's preview game week 2 more importantly now. So next up, I just want to do a quick overview of the fixtures, a bit more long-term, as well as game week 2. And we're going to use RobT's graphics here because they are fantastic. I know everybody uses them, but they are decent, to be fair. And it gives us a bit more of a third-party view. We have our own opinions. We have the FPL returns. Now we've got to take a look at what the bookies are thinking each and every game is going to be, and maybe where our transfers should be for game week 2. So here we have the projected goals and clean sheet odds, and you can see the standouts for goals. Arsenal leading the way at 2.5 against a Leeds team that were impressive in game week 1, but I still back Arsenal in game week 2 at home. Man City at 2.35 projected goals. Then we got Bournemouth at 1.9 and Chelsea at 1.95, followed by Liverpool at 1.9. So those are the 5 standout teams. Of course, there are other teams, in my personal opinion, that could do okay in their respective fixtures. You know, I think Aston Villa could do well against Brentford. I think the Palace Forest game will be one or two things. It'll either be a high scoring game or it is going to be a bit of a dull fest at 0-0. Bookies here really are thinking it's going to be more of a snore fest. So in terms of the actual games, Arsenal is the real standout one. But this is where I want you guys to make sure that you're understanding how your transfers are going to be from a time frame perspective. Because yes, we could all do Watkins to GYOKERES and we could all do Cole Palmer to Saka for game week 2 at the expense, of course, of a points hit and really double down. And I think you probably will get your returns in game week 2. But let's look a bit more long term. The Leeds game is fantastic. But then after that, Liverpool away. If I'm then sat there with Saka and GYOKERES in my team, I don't think I'm fully optimising the game. I'm going to be honest. Then Forest at home, which I think, based on what we saw in game week 1, we might get the same Forest once again. And there's no reason why we shouldn't think we're going to get that. They've kept their back four. They've kept their goalkeeper. Yes, they got rid of Elanga, but they've invested wisely, in particular Douglas Luiz, McAtee coming in. I do think that will be a tough game once again for Arsenal. And then, of course, they've got Man City in game week 5, followed by Newcastle away. I know the game against Leeds in game week 2 is tempting, but personally, I think avoiding Arsenal is the route to go. And if you were to buy one, I think defensively is where I would go as opposed to that of the attack. Now, outside of that, Man City are obviously getting a lot of traction right now, both Randers and Erling Haaland and Aït-Nouri. You can see on the far side there, the clean sheet odds. Man City versus Spurs being at 34%, which I probably would agree with. I think Man City are above Spurs right now in terms of just development, evolution as a team. And I do think Spurs is going to be interesting. We haven't seen them with Thomas Frank, apart from that PSG game, play a top Premier League team where he might play his classic 5-3-2 formation and Kudus might play as a front two. I'm still very, very sus on Man City defensively. I still think they have all their issues still in plain sight that they have not addressed at all. And I think we're going to see that against Spurs. So yes, you can buy a Man City defender, and I think there will be some returns, but Spurs, I think, have the ability with Kudus to hit them in transitions. I think Brighton always have goals in them. Man United with Cunha and Mbeumo, I think, will have threats against Man City. And then Arsenal in game week 5. So once again, yes, I think Man City are good investments, but the opposite of Arsenal. I think I'd rather buy Man City offensively than that of defensively. And because Haaland's so expensive, unless you are sacrificing Mo Salah or Cole Palmer, I think Randers at 5.6 million now is an incredible investment for your team. The rest of the games, as you can see here, we won't deep dive as I think they have probably covered themselves. But if you have any questions on this section, please do let me know. But now let's take a look at the hot topics, because of course we need to know what we need to do for this week. So next up, taking a look at the game week 2 hot topics. And before we get into them, just a quick heads up. I haven't covered in particular players being bought in and sold going into game week 2. The reason being is I've literally done a dedicated video to that previously on the channel called the Game Week 2 Buy or Avoid. Please do check that out. I go into way more detail. I wouldn't be doing it any justice here if I try and rambled it off in 30 seconds. So please do check out. I cover Verts, I cover João Pedro, cover basically everybody that you need to know about who are in the top 20 most bought or most sold players. So I do recommend that out, but of course it is my own video, so I am going to recommend it. So let's take a look at the hot topics. The big one coming out over the last 12 hours or so, of course, is the Kai Havertz injury, which looks long-term. The fact that Arsenal, we'll talk about it, have already dipped into the market and are still looking suggests to me Kai Havertz could be out up until Christmas. Now, that's really interesting because it makes GYOKERES an option. I think what we saw in game week 1, even though they got Leeds at home in game week 2, the fact that Kai Havertz come on at, I believe, the 65th minute for GYOKERES was a big no-no. Nobody should be buying GYOKERES when we have that risk of rotation, and the fact his debut was a little bit lackluster. However, Arteta hasn't really got any choices now. He could play certain people as a 9, but he doesn't really have an out-and-out 9. And when you're spending that sort of money, you've got to play him and you've got to integrate him into the team. So GYOKERES is going to play significant minutes against Leeds. Now, we covered it off in the previous section. I think if you buy an Arsenal attacker, really it is for game week 2 and that is it. Because the teams that they're coming up against are good defensively outside of that. So Yes, I think GYOKERES is a brilliant buy if you want to go that brilliant. I kind of exaggerate that. But the fixtures are tough afterwards. And who would I rather have this week? Selling Watkins to get GYOKERES and using a precious free transfer, or just keeping Watkins and having the Brentford away game? I think I'd rather have Watkins and then know the fixtures afterwards are much better for Aston Villa. So yes, you can go to GYOKERES. I can't really say no because the fixture's good, but I personally would rather just roll my transfer and keep Watkins in the team. Now, of course, Arsenal have sabotaged, hijacked, whatever you want to call it, the transfer of Spurs buying Eze, and he is now officially an Arsenal player. Do we buy him? The answer is no. As I said, use this opportunity between now and game week 6 where the fixtures are really difficult to have him on your watch list. And then come game week 7, if Eze looks sensational at his price point, then yes. Or by all means, go get him in your teams. He could be incredible value and an easy way into that Arsenal team. In particular, if Saka has lost penalties to GYOKERES, Eze is just going to become basically a better version of Saka from a value perspective. So make sure you do check that out, but don't be buying him this game week, please. And if you own him in FPL, that's worth noting because, of course, he was at Crystal Palace. I would be very tempted to sell him because he isn't going to play in game week 2. You don't even know if he'll get game week 3. He might get rotated a few minutes off the bench. So I think if you own Eze, weirdly enough, I would sell him. Maybe a Morgan Rogers is a nice alternative. Otherwise, go all the way down to Randers or Anderson, who have good fixtures. Next up, loads of people talking about a free hit in game week 2. Personally, I don't love it. I don't think the fixtures are good enough to justify it. But for those that just want to pull the trigger, I will put up a free hit draft for you here. And I think the whole point of a free hit sometimes is being a bit exciting with some differentials. So we got Sanchez and Cucurella as a Chelsea double up at the back. Munoz and Gabriel. I think that is going to be in everybody's free hit team. Midfield 5, I think you have to go Randers when he's been bought by a million managers. If you free hit and go against him and he does well, that is going to sting a little bit. Saka at home against Leeds, I still think he is a standout attacker in that Arsenal team. Now, we've gone for Estevao. As a Chelsea fan, I think he's going to get some decent minutes against West Ham. Yes, we have a Friday night kickoff, so we probably will get some sort of team news as well. So do monitor that one, but I think Estevao is a very cheeky differential for game week 2. Rogers and then Semenyo make up the midfield, and Haaland with the captaincy, and GYOKERES, as we've spoken about, as the front two. So if you're looking for a free hit, I think that has a decent structure that you can go off. Next up, game week 2 differentials. Who are they? I know people love going for some differentials early on to chase the upside. Number 3, as I spoke about, we're going for Estevao, but again, I'd only have him on a free hit. There's no world that I'd be downgrading Cole Palmer to Estevao as part of a transfer. Oscar Bob, a brilliant alternative to Randers, but if you said to me right now, who's going to get more minutes in the next 6 game weeks, I do believe it will be Randers, but please do monitor Oscar Bob. I don't think anybody else, now that they're looking to sell Savinho, is an out-and-out winger that can do the job that Oscar Bob can do on the right-hand side, and I wouldn't be surprised if he established himself as a number 1 starter in this City team. But we know at times he might play an overlapping fullback, which will then require an inverted winger, essentially, which will be Phil Foden. But the number 1 differential for me is going to be Evan-Neilson. Bournemouth look good against Liverpool at times, have a home game against Wolves, and I think Evan-Neilson, with him being less than 5% owned, is a fantastic forward for you to own, and a bit of a differential if you don't want to go for GYOKERES as an example, and Bournemouth's fixtures are way better than that of Arsenal's. Now, in terms of captain, this is going to make or break everybody's game week. At 3, I've got Mo Salah. Now, this probably will be the default captaincy for a lot of people, I believe, because Newcastle are good, and I think the atmosphere will be hostile. But we also look at Liverpool and think they will score goals in general. So I think Mo Salah will be a lot of people's default captain, and I have a bit more belief in the Liverpool team than that of Chelsea right now. So he's going to be number 3. Number 2 will be Saka or GYOKERES, whichever Arsenal investment you do have, if you have one at all. I think you really just go for the one. Doesn't really matter which one you have. But number 1 for me is standout, and it is going to be Erling Haaland. I think Spurs are good, but I haven't seen enough to suggest that Man City can't score goals against them. So I think if you own Erling Haaland, I think he is the standout captain, and we know what he can do in any given game week. That is quite clear, but I do understand if people want to go Cole Palmer, Chelsea don't become a bad team overnight. Finally, top 3 game week 2 players to buy. Number 3, we're going for Semenyo. I totally get the hype there, but it's a tricky price point. I don't know if I'll be moving straight away from Morgan Rogers to Semenyo myself. Anderson, the forgotten 5.5 million. I think this one is actually my preference over Randers, controversially. Very close to the defensive contributions of 2 points and looked excellent in that team. The only downside is Forest are recruiting. McAtee's coming in, Douglas Luiz. Will that impact Anderson? Personally, I don't think so. I think he's that important to this Forest team. His minutes will be good regardless. And finally, we've got Randers. I get it. I like the hype. I do think he will get guaranteed minutes in this City team, and for that, I think he is a great investment. Okay, moving into my Game Week 2 team selection, kicking things off, of course, with the goalkeepers. Now, usually, goalkeepers, we don't have to make it any sort of discussion. However, we actually do have a dilemma in Game Week 2. Sanchez away against West Ham, a team that, of course, were pretty damn poor in Game Week 1, but I do anticipate a bit of a reaction from West Ham, and whenever you have Jared Bowen in your team, I always think there are opportunities for him and them as a team. So I don't think the Chelsea pick of Sanchez is absolutely locked in, because we do have Dubravka with a home game against Sunderland. Now, yes, I know Sunderland were fantastic at home, where the atmosphere was incredible, and of course it was a very high adrenaline game. Are they going to be the same when they go to Burnley, a team, of course, that dominated them in the Championship? I know Sunderland have recruited really well, and maybe they have elevated Burnley as a team, but this is definitely one to think about right now. I'm currently about 60% on Sanchez, but I could be tempted to go for the Dubravka pick. The reason why I'm not right now is because I already have a piece of the Burnley defence. Double Burnley defence for me doesn't really fill me with huge hope, and I would kick myself, I think, if I just left a Chelsea defender on the bench, or a goalkeeper in this case, and I was to actually look at a clean sheet. So, for that reason, I think we're going to go for Sanchez, and we're going to go for Steve as my Burnley cover with home game against Sunderland. You can see here we've got Anderson at home against Man United on the bench. I think there is high potential that Anderson will rack up the defensive contributions, but I also do think Steve has the potential for that as well, and probably a higher clean sheet odds, because I do think Man United are looking better offensively. I think in Buemo, I think Cunha will cause problems for this Fulham team. We've got Porro away against Man City. Now, a lot of people probably saying, no, play Anderson over Porro. But if the Super Cup is anything to behold going into this Man City game, I do think Pedro Porro could play as a right wing back on all set pieces, and his delivery is fantastic, as we know. So I think Pedro Porro, for me, is just going to play with no expectation of a clean sheet, but more from the sense of, can he grab an attack and return? Could he rack up some defensive contributions and at least get me 2, 3, 4 points? That would be fantastic for this game week, because clean sheets are looking a bit few and far between. And finally, we've got Murillo. Now, I do think that this is one of those that previously didn't look great. However, with the transfer of Eze to Arsenal, it makes this fixture a little bit more tasty. You know the atmosphere in Palace is going to be a bit defiant. They probably are going to be thinking to themselves, come on, let's bounce back. We lost our best player, but we can't crumble. But it's easier said than done. And I think Forest are really good defensively. So would I be surprised if Forest do a number on Palace after this news of Eze leaving, which is going to naturally hinder them in both a defensive and an offensive capacity? I think it will. So for that reason, Murillo is going to start. And even if Palace do put up a great performance, defensive contributions hopefully will land in Murillo's lap this week. So that is pretty much locked in terms of the goalkeeper and defence. Okay, so moving into our Game Week 2 midfielders. Now, as we've spoken about, I think a few players here are just locked in. Mo Salah, Bruno Fernandes. Now, I know I don't have Randers, I don't have Anderson, I don't have Kudus, I don't have all of these sensational midfielders, I have no Arsenal. But going into Game Week 2 with only one free transfer available, my team structure is one that I can't get to a lot of players easily. For example, if I want to go to Randers at 5.6 million, I would love to have him, but I would either have to take a -4, improve Dewsbury Hall to Randers, and downgrade somebody else in this team for a -4. Not in love with that. Or I downgrade Morgan Rogers to these 5.5 millions. And again, an away game against Brentford, I think is so knee-jerk for me to look at that and say to myself, Morgan Rogers, one of the best players last season from an FPL perspective, cannot do anything against Brentford. I think that's rubbish. So when I look at this midfield, yes, there are opportunities for me to just jump ship on players that didn't perform and go for those that did perform in Game Week 1. But as we know, I don't think Game Week 1 is going to be evidence of what is going to happen in Game Week 2. When I look at these fixtures here, yes, Dewsbury Hall might have been a mistake, but a home game against Brighton, where Everton are definitely going to need a response in this new stadium of theirs, I don't mind having Dewsbury Hall for one more game week. Salah away against Newcastle, as we've spoken about, is not ideal. But do I want to use him as a cash cow and then take a points hit to bring in Erling Haaland? Not really. So Salah is going to remain in the team. And as we've spoken about, Cole Palmer away against West Ham. I think that's a tricky game. I don't think Chelsea are all there right now. I think they're trying to integrate GYOKERES and Estevao and all that. And I think João Pedro is fantastic, but sometimes takes up the same positions as that of Cole Palmer. Hopefully we see the Super Cup Chelsea team or the Club World Cup team as opposed to what we saw in game week 1, who were looking really blunt in the final third. So Palmer is definitely going to stick around. And then we have Bruno Fernandes away against Fulham, where, again, people are jumping ship on Bruno Fernandes. I'm not really there. Wirtz has got tricky next 2. Bruno has got Fulham away and Burnley at home. I am keeping him for those next 2 games. And then in game week 4, we're going to reassess and see exactly what we need to do with Bruno Fernandes. Is Mbeumo and Cunha better value at $1 million cheaper? Possibly. But until we get to game week 4, I don't even want to deliberate what to do there. So, yes, I don't have some of the popular midfielders going into game week 2. But I'm more than happy to give these boys another game week and then reassess in game week 3. But let me know what you would do in the comment section, of course. Moving into my game week 2 forwards, and this is probably where the big dilemma has been for my team, because whereas the midfielders, I felt like I've got a good pick. Yes, Randers is really, really tempting, but I can't really get there. The move that was very, very easy for my team was Watkins to GYOKERES or João Pedro to somebody like a Chris Wood as an example. However, as we've spoken about, I don't want to judge everything based on one game week. For me, the fact that Watkins blanked is not a concern. Brentford away I think is a good fixture, and as we've spoken about, I don't really want to move away from him when I know the fixtures long term are great. So even though he blanked in game week 1, I don't read anything bad into that. The same could be said of João Pedro, but what we can take from game week 1 is minutes. That is the only thing I want to take from game week 1. And any sort of like obscurities, maybe like an out of position play, didn't really happen in these 2. What we saw with João Pedro is an early substitution. That is a red flag straight away. Because while Watkins blanked, and he might blank again, I know he's playing every single minute. João Pedro, if he blanks again, he is coming off after 70 minutes, regardless of even if he's putting in a good performance. Delap will get minutes. Maresca had him in the Man City Academy. He knows him. He likes him. And I think it's only a matter of time until Delap gets the opportunity to start. For what it's worth, I think João Pedro starts in game week 2, and if he doesn't do well, probably will be a bench player in game week 3. So by that logic, I think rolling my transfer in game week 2 and giving myself 2 free transfers for game week 3 with the knowledge that I might need to pull the trigger on João Pedro and get him gone. Now it's worth noting, by game week 2 deadline on Friday, we might have João Pedro at a price drop. So that is not a good situation to be in. So I get why people want to take the move and get rid of João Pedro. But for me, Chris Wood away against Palace, I think Palace are good defensively. I don't really think that is a desperate move. Solanke and Richarlison, they are just going to rotate minutes. Sesko, it's too early to go to. Ekitike, I need money in the bank. So with all that said, I'm willing to give João Pedro one more week and then reassess going into game week 3, knowing I've got 2 free transfers in the bank to be reactive and go to whatever direction I need to with my team. But let me know in the comment section, have you sold João Pedro already? For me, I'm just going to keep him. Finally, take a look at this game week 2 captaincy, because I really do believe this is going to dictate whether you have a good game week or a terrible game week. I really do feel like the fixtures are those that the captaincy is going to be so important. We've spoken about the top 3. If you have Haaland, number 1. If you have Arsenal, next best. Then it really is a shootout between Mo Salah and Cole Palmer. I really think it is neck and neck. I think Salah was quiet in game week 1, but I do think Liverpool are going to score goals with the players that they do have. Yes, this atmosphere is going to be tasty, to say the least, what has happened between Alexander Isak and Liverpool and the Newcastle fans. So I think this is going to have a bit more edge to it. So that could see us have a little bit more of a frantic game, which might play in the hands of Mo Salah. Whereas Cole Palmer, remember, it's a Friday night deadline, you don't want to hurt yourself. I do think Chelsea will beat West Ham. I do think West Ham defensively are not fantastic. And I do think Cole Palmer probably has the highest ceiling. However, I'm just a little bit cautious that Chelsea might be trying to break in a few players and it might not necessarily click for these opening few game weeks. I spoke about that in pre-season. I thought we were good in the Club World Cup, but I don't know whether it's going to translate to Premier League form in these opening weeks. Mo Salah for me, I think, is a bit more of a certainty, a bit more of a guarantee, and Palmer has the highest ceiling. And for that, just leaning towards Mo Salah right now, but I've got to put it out there, it's like 55%. if I'm honest, there's a bit of a temptation just to go completely rogue and go for Ollie Watkins, because I don't think the upside for Salah or Palmer are huge. I don't think either get a brace, for example. Whereas, would I be surprised if Ollie Watkins walked away with a brace in this game? I wouldn't. So for that, I am considering Ollie Watkins differential captain, but as of right now, it is on Mo Salah. But of course, I will be doing a deadline live stream tomorrow, and I will update you if I've got any changes on the captaincy. Yes, guys, okay, so that's going to wrap up today's video looking at my Game Week 2 team selection. As we said, most likely going to roll my transfer. What I'll be doing in tomorrow's video is just answering any deadline dilemmas. I'll try and drop that as early as possible. And what I'll also do in tomorrow's video is deep dive into what my transfer plans will be after rolling this transfer in Game Week 2. Just to give you a bit of an open-end perspective and also a chip strategy. So make sure if you're not already, you are subscribed to the channel and you do hit that notification bell so you know when I'm dropping that video. And of course, the deadline live stream. As always, if you have any questions, please do pop them in the comment section. Have an amazing day and I'll see you real soon. Cheers.